Good evening and welcome to The Journey Home. I'm Marcus Grodi, your host for this program. Each week, EWTN gives me this opportunity to bring into your homes the stories of men and women who either came to the Catholic Church for the first time or came back. And we call those, for want of a better term, reverts, and that's such that we have tonight. Leah Darrow is a revert and a speaker on important issues. You may have heard her already on EWTN, possibly on a couple programs. So Leah, welcome to The Journey Home.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Both as your witness of your journey of faith to rediscover the beauties of the church, but also for the courageous apostolate that you've accepted in your life at a very important time in the needs of especially our young people today, in the culture that we have been dropped into by our good Lord, you know.
Yes.
So it's got its challenges, doesn't it?
It does.
To live out our faith in this particular culture. Yeah. But of course, this program, it goes beyond the American culture. It goes to many, many countries, many other places around the world who not only have people that have gone through a similar journey to you, have gone away from the church, come back, but are fighting those same battles in many different cultures. So it's great to have you on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What I normally do is get out of the way as soon as I can and invite you to start back at the beginning to give the audience a little glimpse of your early spiritual journey.
Sure. Well, I was born and raised Catholic. I was born and raised in Oklahoma, actually. Grew up on a farm, just a really beautiful childhood, really. Was very blessed to have that. And I'm the oldest of 6 kids. So, you know, was a little mini mom to those siblings. They probably hated it then, but, you know, I perfected the art of being bossy and delegating. But yeah, I grew up in the faith, and I'm very blessed to have parents who, you know, we prayed every night together. It was a habit that we said the rosary every night even. Sometimes we were, you know, we didn't come politely into the living room. Sometimes we were, you know, dragged in, but we did that. And my parents taught us how to pray, and they taught us how to talk to God. And sometimes, you know, there's still fighting and screaming going on in the rosary, and, you know, one brother is biting another brother or something, and there's all sorts of things going on, but it was a great time to come together. And I did treasure that, even though sometimes I didn't feel like praying. And I remember my mom always told me, she says, well, it's not about how you feel, you know, that this is justice to God, that we come and we love God and we pray to Him and we ask for His love and for His protection on our family. And so I was raised in that type of an atmosphere. However, there were moments later on when I was growing up, and once I got into high school, and at this point my family moved from Oklahoma to St. Louis. My father's job transferred us, and in that time during high school is when things really started to change for me.
Well, there's a couple things back on your early days. So you went through the usual hoops as a young Catholic.
That's right. That's right.
You know, baptized, catechized, confirmed, all the things.
Yes, baptized, had the confirmation, catechized. I'm not quite sure how well, maybe, looking back in hindsight, how well that was done in some ways. I remember even being confirmed, I didn't quite understand what was going on. I just knew, okay, there's something about the Holy Spirit here, and that's a good thing, and this means that I choose to be Catholic, and okay, but pretty much that was it. And but yes, I did. I went through all the hoops, did all those things, went to Mass every Sunday.
And from the outside, to the eyes of your parents, to the eyes of others, you would look like a good Catholic girl.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right. We had a good Catholic family, and we absolutely love God. We love Jesus. We're practicing our faith, and that's just the way it's supposed to be. How that was integrating into real life is totally different.
Well, and the other question also is, as we're now approaching your maybe wandering years during high school,
right.
What was going on inside you? I mean, did you have an authentic faith yourself up inside, apart from the externals of your Catholic faith?
Yeah, I think that there was that struggle. Deep down, absolutely, I love God. I knew I loved God. I knew I loved Jesus. I knew that He was there for me, that He died for me, and my sins, and I loved that. But it was a fear of how do I make that? How do I go to the next step with that? What do you do? Do I just believe this? Do I just practice it and really feel this and believe this 1 hour on Sunday? What do I do Monday through Saturday? And I wasn't sure what to do with that. And I had lots of friends, and most of them were Catholic. However, their practice of their faith didn't extend past noon on Sunday. Yeah. So what do we do? And there was that confusion. And for me in high school, and when I moved from Oklahoma to St. Louis, I got a whole new group of friends. Many of them were not Catholic. There were some that were definitely Christian, but I feel like they were still struggling with the same things I was struggling with in their faith of just, we love Jesus, we believe in God, but we'll talk about him on this one day for an hour or so.
What age were you when you made the move?
15.
Yeah, so that's a tough time.
Right. It was after my freshman year of high school, so I was starting out my sophomore year in high school, and you really come into starting to discover, who am I? What's going on? What's important in my life? My friends, my sports, my activities, or faith, parents. Yeah. And you start prioritizing things, and sometimes we do that and we do it in the wrong way. Yeah. We prioritize things above others that we shouldn't. And that's what happened for me.
Did you make the clean switch from that Catholic community to the new one at St. Louis? Was that a good switch for you?
For me, I'm not sure it was a very good move in terms of that. It ended up being, all things all work out for good, but no, it was very difficult. It was very difficult. I left all of my family, all of my friends, everybody who knew us to be good Catholic kids, to be a good Catholic family, to thrown into a different group with a different set of beliefs. And my friends around me, while some of them were very good Christians and great, but they definitely took on a new belief system of what we do on the weekends and what we do outside of school and on parties. And so that started to really come into my life and influence me in a way that took me slowly away from my faith. And there was that one moment for me that things did happen.
Yeah, we've often on the journey home talked about this kind of idea of a soup that we live in, the culture that we live in. You were in with your Oklahoma experience, but also into that soup, you had television and all the other influences giving you ideas in your culture, in your Oklahoma. Then you moved to St. Louis. It's a different soup,
that's right.
Of all kinds of things. And the time period that you're living and growing up, as a teenager, brought out of your comfortable into a new environment, new kids, even a new church. And you're saying that's really when things started changing for you.
They did. They changed for me. And I know, when looking back on it now, I know that there was one moment that really did take a turn, unfortunately for the worst. But it was that moment. I was 15 in my high school. It was cool, of course, cool to have a boyfriend, and you had to have one. If you didn't, you had to see a school nurse. Something was dreadfully wrong with you. So relationships were really important, and not just relationships with your girlfriends, but more so relationship with the opposite sex. Relationship, with your boyfriend for a girl. And so I had a boyfriend. I had to have a boyfriend, so you'll take anybody. So you get a boyfriend. And I was dating this guy, and he was older than me, and he was a senior in high school, and it was really cool, and you just feel like you were a part of this group now. Now you can have conversations about your boyfriend that you couldn't and you had no idea about as a single person in high school. And so with that, I had this boyfriend, and things were progressing in that way. And it was homecoming, and the dance was coming up, and I was getting all ready for it. And as most teenagers do, we enjoy this time. We love this time. And for girls, we love it even more. It's about the dress. It's about getting dressed up and the fashion. And I love that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's a good time to enjoy yourself and have fun.
Well, in some parts of our country, especially the South, this is the coming out time.
Absolutely.
This is it for the girl. You're entering into society.
That's right.
This is a big deal.
It is a big deal. And to a point that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to a point, obviously. But that's how it was. I was really excited to get all dressed up. I'm really enjoying the process of doing this, the dance and wearing a pretty dress. And, you feel like a little bit like, like a Disney movie. You get dressed up and you go to the ball and you have a fun time. And you dance with your girlfriends and you dance with your boyfriend. And it's just good, clean fun. It's great. But it was after that. It was after the homecoming dance and everything like that where I was presented with this question. I was asked to me a couple weeks prior to the dance of Leah, are you ready for it? And I had a friend ask me this, and I thought, well, of course I'm ready for it. I've got my dress and my shoes. Why would I not be ready? And they said, no, come on, are you ready for it? And at 15, I actually did not know what they were talking about. And they ended up informing me, like, Leah, it is sex. Are you ready for that? And that took me by surprise. I wasn't quite sure what to think about it. I knew what my parents had told me. I knew what our church had said. The whys of why my parents said that, or the whys of why our church makes a stance in chastity, I didn't understand that. I didn't know that. I just knew that you shouldn't do that until you're married. And I got nervous and concerned and scared, and I didn't know if I should talk to my parents. I didn't know if I should talk to anybody else. All of my girlfriends, and they were all accepting of that in a relationship in high school. And so after the homecoming dance, situation presents itself if that was going to happen or not. And at 15, it did happen, and I lost my virginity at that time. And it's something that...
Yeah. I was going to say that you mean what you're describing is interesting. I'm thinking of the audience that's watching that's more my age, that wasn't the expectation.
Right.
Are you ready for it? It certainly happened back in our days, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like the normal expectation. That was just what girls your age would go through at that time.
Right.
And there you are in this, the soup, this is what they agreed.
Absolutely.
And if you want to be a part of that, this is what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're really just a little girl dealing with big girl issues.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where, don't get me wrong. I believe in the mercy of Jesus Christ. I know I've been forgiven. I've given that to God. Yeah. It still, I think, brings up that wound when I do share this with people because, I just don't think I realized how great I was. And I think with that, the gift of my purity, that beautiful gift that God gives each and every one of us, that is truly a gift and meant to be given in a very special and complete way, in a covenant, in a sacrament. Mm-hmm. And we so quickly seem to just want to lose that and to do that so quickly to be a part of the societal norms or what's acceptable or to be a part of a group or to be accepted. And we realized very quickly afterwards that this was a big deal and this was very important and special. Yeah.
And once
you cross that line,
then
it's very difficult.
We're going to pause here for a moment. I want to take a quick break, okay?
Sure.
And we'll come right back in a second. We'll see you in a bit. Welcome back to the Journey Home. Our guest tonight is Leah Darrow, and you noticed a box of Kleenex all of a sudden appeared on the set, and I felt real bad that I couldn't help you, and I wanted to make sure because the tears are a very valid expression of really what your apostolate is all about. I mean, once you've made this decision, right?
Absolutely. It's a choice that cannot be undone. And while Christ forgives me, and I believe in that, it's a choice that I made. It's a choice I made that it cannot be undone. And while I lost my virginity, I still can regain my purity and take up a new life with that. But it doesn't erase or take back that moment of I made this choice and these are the consequences of my choice. And that's the universal paradox. We are free to make choices in this world, but we are not free from the consequences of those choices.
And part of the problem, I think you agree, is that we now live in this culture that doesn't value virginity.
Absolutely not. We laugh at it. We think it's a joke. We think it's something silly. We think it's child's play. Like, oh, isn't that sweet? That's awfully nice that you have that. Just get rid of it and grow up.
Yeah.
And we have this idea that that's how we should look at it. And in my audiences that I speak to, I purposely make a point for those people to give them a round of applause. And you should see the audience and these high schools are clapping like crazy, because we need to let them know that this is a beautiful gift, and it's a grace from God to keep it. It takes courage and fortitude and temperance, and we need to be encouraging those virtues in that way.
So, after this happened,
right.
What happened to you?
Well, it was obviously a life-changing moment at 15, a choice that I made at 15, and I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure. I knew immediately something terrible had happened. I knew immediately that something was wrong. I, emotionally was expressing that, and how I felt and everything. I got scared. Would God forgive me? Okay, I'm told that of course He forgives us, but does He really? Can I really change? And I had, the devil being the accuser. I really felt, I guess, and looking back on it, those types of temptations of, oh, well, you screwed up. And of course, my friends were almost congratulating me. And, oh, that's so great and wonderful. And I'm confused because internally, I don't feel like this is something that we should be celebrating. And they're saying it's no big deal. And I think we're all just trying to convince ourselves that it's not a problem. And I allowed that type of mentality to really come into my thinking and into my philosophy of life. And I began to think, well, I can't change it. I can't get it back. I might as well just keep moving forward. And I guess just accept this life and accept this lifestyle. And I began to define love in a very impure way. And I defined love in a hazardous and inadequate way. I defined love in a way that was a physical expression of what you do with something. That love was something that your body does, and that's about it. Were
you basing this new definition of love that you had adopted on things you heard from the church, or things you heard from family or friends, or just...
That new definition of love came completely from cultural experience, from my own personal experience of making my mistake. And I looked to culture to validate me, because it did. Yeah. Culture told me I wasn't wrong. Culture told me it was okay. Culture told me this is about being a woman. Culture told me that it'll be safe and fine as long as you do this, this, and this. And if I listened to culture, then it temporarily made me feel not so bad about my choices. If I really wanted to be honest and to look at the truth and to seek truth, I would look to see what my parents were giving me, what the church was telling me and giving me as well. And that convicted me. And that made me change. It would force me into looking at my choices and saying, now listen, you see the truth and you see that you're living in a lie. Do you choose to change? And it was too scary to look at the truth. So I just, I accepted a false definition of love. I accepted the imitation of love, because it validated my life. It made it easy.
Yeah, but I'm a little nervous to make this comparison, because I can imagine a few viewers getting mad at me at my comment, but it reminds me a little bit of what Martin Luther did. In other words, dealing with his personal guilt, his personal feeling of inadequacy.
Right.
And so what he does to make himself deal with that is he redefines faith in such a way that he can live with his feeling of inadequacy.
Right. Absolutely.
It's no longer what you do, it's just having faith.
Right. Exactly.
Is all you need. So you redefine love to make yourself feel better about the guilt.
I did not want to redefine my life, I wanted to redefine love and faith. Yeah. And it was easier to change those and to change my life. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I did, and I lived that way for a period of 10 years. A decade of my life from 15 to 25 was...
What about church at this point?
Oh, absolutely love God. Still love God. You see, I consider myself a Catholic still. I still had my members only card, right, and everything that I got. I love God, and I accept most of what the church teaches, which, 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 is still not bad. That's still more than half. It's pretty good, I thought. So it's not too bad. I guess now I consider myself, I can look back on that and say that I was really in the sense of this buffet Catholic. Walking down that line, putting a few things on my plate. Oh, yes, I love that. I love God more than anything above else. I won't steal. No way. And I won't do these things. My plate was full enough for me. And I was that buffet Catholic. I didn't realize that now I see this as Catholicism is not a buffet religion. It's a banquet religion where we're all called to sit down to the 7-course meal. Christ calls us all to table. And I just thought, well, that's a big commitment. You know, you say yes to that dinner and you sit down with him, the 7-course meal. That's a lot. That's a very big commitment of your life, and I wasn't quite ready to change. So I allowed myself just to kind of give and take a little bit, still going to Mass on Sundays, you know, when I could. Confession was a different story. That's too convicting. Wasn't sure if I could do that. And when I did go, though, I wouldn't tell the priest everything. Yeah. It's like I wanted the priest to think well of me. You know, even in the confessional. So, you know, when you're sinning in the confessional, it's a big sign that things are not going well. When you're like purposely saying, well, I kind of did this, but only because this person did this. So like you're trying to convince yourself that it's not a sin in the confessional. So those are my experiences going on. I would receive communion in a state of mortal sin because I was embarrassed to keep my butt in the pew, you know. I didn't want to. I thought, well, if people know that I'm not going to communion, they will know I'm a sinner, and I can't possibly do that. I want to get in line with all the saints, right? And going up there to communion. So I went up, and that was just my life. And then those things slowly became more irritating to me in a way, and not in a bad way, but I just knew I wasn't authentic. I wasn't doing what I should, but I didn't want to face who I really was, and so I sometimes wouldn't go to Mass on Sundays, or, you know, definitely was further and further away from the sacrament of confession and reconciliation. So just kind of all was leading me further, and that slow fade from the faith. Very slow.
Because what was important to you, had grown to be important to you, was what others thought of you,
absolutely.
Not what God did.
No, absolutely. Absolutely right. I had placed the world, culture, other people, how people thought of me, what I thought of myself, way above what God thought. And I validated that with, because that sounds really bad, you know. I validated that with, God is love, you know. God loves me. I love God, and I'm a good person. You know. I do lots of good things. Sure, I'm still a sinner, and I struggle in some areas, but God loves me, and God is love, and I'm a good person, and He wouldn't send a person like me to hell. There's no way. I mean, I love Him, so there's no way. How could He send me to hell? I mean, that's, you know, and I kind of saved myself in that way. I saved myself with that type of a thinking that I allowed myself to kind of keep going on.
Again, it's this redefining of theology to make you feel better about your own sinfulness, the guilt, the feeling. So you redefine. Oh,
I had a whole new denomination. It was a theology of Leah Darrow. Church of Leah Darrow is what I went to every day, you know.
What about did it affect your moral practice during those 10 years? I mean,
absolutely. Of course it does. I mean, when you define faith, you redefine morality. It goes hand in hand. So, the impure relationships kept up, you know, and I just began to desensitize myself more and more away from, obviously, real authentic love and accept the imitation love. And, of course, accepting the impure relationships brought about other consequences that I had to deal with. So fully engaging contraception, cohabitation, and all of those issues. The lifestyle that culture supports and the vices of impurities and contraceptions and all those other things open yourself up to a whole different other world. Partying and drinking and all the different types of behaviors that you do on the weekends are now fully acceptable. It's a part of it. It just is completely a part of that. So, you know, throughout college, and it's completely going on. And then after college was, I get this crazy idea to audition for this TV show, America's Next Top Model, which fit into the frame of life, you know. No big deal, it's just something to do. And that's where things really started to roll.
But all during this time, as far as you're concerned, you're a good Catholic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I've got a great family. My mother and father, they're the wonderful family in church, you know. I've got my brothers and sisters practicing their faith too. We looked great. We look like a cookie cutter, you know. I mean, you just have the 6 kids, the mom and dad. When I was home on the weekends from college or wherever I was living, I would go to Mass with them, of course, and I would receive communion so they knew that I was just as good as them, and you know, making sure we all are okay. Absolutely.
And you did this experience with the modeling audition during this period, not after your change of heart, right?
Oh, no.
What was that experience like? I mean, was there pressure in the same area from the system that you were in to
It's
give in and
amplified.
raise?
Yeah, it's even more so. There's definitely the same pressures that were going on in my life prior were there as well, but just amplified and more obvious. You just kind of, sometimes it took you back to think about, wow, they really only care about what I look like and the size of me and this and that. I mean, you kind of thought that, but they're making it very clear that that's exactly what's going on. And when I auditioned for America's Next Top Model, I was on season 3, and I got on, obviously.
Yeah.
You realize really quickly the reality of reality TV. You know, what we as viewers watch of these shows, if we watch them, it's not at all what goes on behind the scenes. I mean, so I remember one of the big awakenings is I was on the show, and we did a lot of filming in New York. At the time we were in New York, we were taken up to the Waldorf Astoria, where we were living for a few weeks, and we noticed quickly that all of the doors were taken off of the hinges. There's no doors to the bedrooms. There's no door to the bathroom. We walk further into the bathroom, there's no shower curtain. All the cameramen are cameramen, and they film you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So there was a lot more film that didn't show on TV.
Oh, hours, days, weeks, absolutely. What the viewer sees on a show is 40 minutes, usually with commercials on there, 40 minutes of edited footage. To get that, what they present on that one day, once a week, is around anywhere between 5 to 7 days of footage that they put together into 40 minutes to give you the most exciting, dramatic show that they can. Because it is about ratings. Reality TV shows are all on that. So yeah, they film us doing everything: eating, sleeping, changing our clothes, using the restroom, showering, all the things that you would want privacy from. There's,
So
remember,
even to this day, they have reels of stuff
that nobody should. What do they do with that? Your guess is as good as mine.
Wow.
But that's what they have, and that's what goes on. That's what they have. I mean, we fought for a shower curtain. Give us a shower curtain. And at the time, until they heeded our request, we were holding up towels for the other girls to take a shower, and there's the video camera, there's the guy filming everything. So
That's bizarre.
it is. I mean, it became very clear to me, even with my wild life, like, this is a violation of human dignity. I mean, they shouldn't be doing this. And then we would yell at them, don't, stop filming us, stop filming us. And they can't talk to you, they can't say anything, and they're just continually filming everything.
When you signed the contract to do this,
Right.
were you aware that this was going to be on your plate?
No. Was it in there? I'm sure it was. That, like, 74-page contract, you know, like font of size 7, you know, back and forth. I mean, it's intense. You sign away your whole life. There was a part, we were reminded frequently if there was anything that we didn't want to do on the show, that we signed the contract and there's a possibility to be sued for $1 million. And we were reminded that frequently. So you're like, well, I guess you have to. I mean, you've got a lot of young girls, you know, frame of mind.
This is their big opportunity,
Yes.
so they're torn between, do I?
Exactly.
Oh boy.
And to even beyond that show, you have to kind of question exactly where they're at in their moral state of life. I mean, you have to be honest about it. You have to ask that. So you have these girls that are on that show, and it gets to be pretty dramatic, and you just are influenced so much to do what they want to do for the show. The show is about, you know, the drama and the ratings. So.
Well, there's always the rumors that in these kinds of contests, the women would do whatever they needed to do to win.
Oh, yeah.
And there's always that rumor behind that has always kind of cast a, you know, that kind of shade to this.
It's a
whole world.
competition, and
Yep.
everybody wants to win. So they encourage that, of course. They encourage those types of behaviors or opinions or attitudes, and you can't be too nice because you might get stabbed in the back or somebody might try to take your spot. So it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. When it comes down, when I was eliminated on the show, I mean, there was a part of me that, of course, I was like upset, but there's a very large part that was so relieved. I just thought, this is crazy. And if I think it's crazy, living my life, it's really crazy. Trust me. I was so happy to get out of there. But of course, happy to leave America's Next Top Model. I wish it would have fueled me into like that moment of reversion that I had later, but not quite yet. So I decided I'm still going to model. I'm still going to make it. And so I decided to move to New York City and become a fashion model and still try to really make it big there.
All right, that's a good place to take a pause. We'll come back after the break and find out how all of this awakened you to the truth of our Lord Jesus and His church. See you in a bit. Welcome back to The Journey Home. I'm Marcus Grodi, your host, and our guest tonight is Leah Darrow. And we're right in the middle. You've just told us about your wonderful experience with the live, the reality show of the modeling, but and you were seeing the problems with it, but it wasn't quite nipping it in the bud yet.
Not quite, not quite. So after America's Next Top Model, I decided, I'm still going to make it. So I moved to New York and get a place in Manhattan, and I'm going to make it. I'm going to be a model, and I'm still going to go for it. At this point, God was really slowly kind of nudging me. I kind of felt like a little bit more irritation with my lifestyle, my choices, but I thought I could handle both. I can be totally in the world and then love God, I guess, on the side, but I wouldn't want to admit that. But I could still have both, all the treasures of the world and the treasures of heaven, all at the same time. And so I continued modeling, and I did that, and I was making pretty good money in New York and doing all those things, and I thought that I was really making it as a professional model. I got a phone call from an international magazine at one point, and they say, "Hey, we saw you on the show, think you did really great, but we think you have something more to offer." Now, of course, my ears are perking up. Well, tell me all that I have to offer, because I'm, of course, looking to the world and looking to them to validate me in my life. And so with that, they asked me to do a photo shoot for them that would be a very different look. Today, we would use the word immodest. That was not in my vocabulary at all. When I heard the word modest, I thought of something in my grandmother's wardrobe. And now, granted, I will say my grandmother dresses wonderfully. However, I just thought it was something that involved, I don't know, just a little too much, like old-fashioned, and I don't know if I want to go there. So I was completely open to this idea for a photo shoot with immodest dress. I mean, they use different words. They use something that would be, it's going to be hot and sexy and all these words that we see on the covers of magazines today. And I thought, well, that sounds exciting and fun, and why would I not want that? So I absolutely said yes and went forward with it. So I get to the photo shoot, and it's a normal, shoot. So I get into hair and makeup and getting all ready. And it was in that moment. I don't know why God chose to make it a photo shoot, but He did. And it was in that moment where everything changed. And I wasn't exactly ready for it. In fact, I could probably say that I wasn't. At least I didn't feel like I was. I think God sometimes uses the surprise attack so we're caught off guard. So we're not readily defensive, as we sometimes are. And the photographer was taking picture after picture, and there was this moment, I was in my pose, and I was wearing my immodest outfit and modeling that, and the flash just came across my eyes. And it was just really bright, and I kind of look off to the side to blink, to get the flash out of my eyes and to refocus. And in that, which only lasted 30 seconds, 60 seconds, nothing more than a minute, I'm blinking and I see this image of myself, probably similar to this happens all the time. Somebody takes a picture and you blink and you see the last image that you just saw in your mind in a way. And this thing is playing inside my head, and I just see myself. And I see myself wearing the immodest outfit, and I'm just standing there inside my head, and I have my hands cupped together at my waist like this. I notice that. And then immediately I just see myself raise my hands all the way up to my head, and I have them cupped together like that, and I see them raised all the way up. And the only thing I see out, but besides that, is out and up above me, I see a shadowy profile of a man's face. That's it. That's all I see. Who looked at my hands, and then he bowed his head in disappointment. And then I pull my hands right back down to see what was so disappointing, and I saw exactly what was in them. You know, it was they were empty. There was nothing in them, and that's it. Everything ended after that, and this only lasted a few seconds, and I'm blinking, and I kept thinking, "You just made that up. You just made that up. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Whatever it was you saw, you didn't see it." I just immediately started going into that mode. No. And every time I would say that to myself, it was like I had this piercing in my heart, just being like, this is real. And I just started tearing up, and I realized, you know, if you agree with me and think that's a real spiritual moment, or even if you think that's a bad ham sandwich, it doesn't really matter, because I knew it was true. I knew that what I was offering to God, all the gifts and talents He had given me, I wasted them on myself. I had nothing to offer Him, because I did nothing for Him, did nothing for my neighbor, did nothing. It was all for Leah Darrow. And I knew that was true. And so in these few seconds afterwards, the photographer snapping his finger, "Leah, focus, come on." And I just couldn't. This internal dialogue and this internal fight's going on of, you know, this didn't happen. No, wait a minute. Yes, it did. This is what's going on. Don't you see? This is your life. Your life is empty. Your life is so empty because you've wasted everything on you. Your life is empty because you've made you the center. And I just got up. I just thought, and I said, I can't do this. And he says, "Well, wait a minute. We're almost done with the photo shoot. Come on. You're almost done. Let's go." And I'm like, "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm leaving." And I get up, and they're having a big problem with that. And I just said, forget it. And I changed my clothes, put on mine, and I'm walking out. And I'm leaving the shoot. And the last words from someone there at the photo shoot was very cliche, but he said, very upset, you know, "We're doing Tyra a favor," who's the host of of the show I was on. "We're doing her a favor for you to be on this. You know, this is unprofessional. You shouldn't be doing this. We can get any other models in here to do this. You know, just finish the job. Why can't? We're almost done. The picture's going to be out anyways." And all these things are going on. And the last words he says is, "If you leave, you're going to be a nobody." And I remember I literally had my hand on the door, and I turned around, and I looked at him, and I just said, "Do you promise?" And he just looks at me, and I wasn't trying to be catty, and I was being serious. I was desperate. I desperately needed him to promise me that. Like, promise me that I'll be nobody to you. Promise me that you won't call me. Promise me you won't tempt me with another job. Like, I don't know if I'm strong enough to say no to you twice, but I need to say no to you now. And I really, at that point, realized I want to be a nobody to you, and I want to be a nobody to this world. The fact is, I've made Jesus a nobody. I've made my faith nothing. And that needs to change. I want it to change. I don't know how that's going to happen, but all I know is that I need to at least accept the truth of I've made the world everything, and it's done nothing for me. And I've made Christ a nobody, and He wants to do everything for me. And so I walked out. I walked out of the photo shoot.
And they let you go.
They did. They, you know, I think it was.
I mean, over the long period of time, you walked out and you were done.
Absolutely. I actually had never received one more phone call or email or invitation. My request was heeded. So yeah, I thankfully was a nobody at that point.
This moment of grace that you had,
yeah,
as you look back, whose prayer was answered?
Probably the deepest prayer that was probably answered was truly mine. I think besides that, obviously my parents.
That's what I was wondering. I wonder if your mother had been praying for you during all these years.
Novena after novena after novena. I mean, on her knees praying, "Jesus, please help my daughter." My dad praying, absolutely. But I truly think that the prayer that was the first one truly was heard was my own. Yeah. Without me even maybe really praying it, but this desire to do something good, desire to do something great in the world, and the desire to be authentic. And not to do something great by the world standards, but really, really something good. And the greatest good, the good, is God. And it has to be done through him, with him, and in him. And I think it was really, honestly, that prayer combined, obviously, with my parents. I have my Aunt Jan, very close to her. She was one of my spiritual guides in my life as well. Oh, I know that woman was praying like crazy, and a lot of people.
I was thinking that some of our non-Catholic viewers, they hear the word novena. What is that? What is that? And the point of that is, it's not that your mother would just once in a while throw up a little prayer.
Oh, no.
I mean, this is a period of 9 days where they're dedicated to offering.
The short ones are, or the 54-day one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A dedicated long period of time on their knees for you.
Yes, prayers of petitions, and then prayers of thanksgiving afterwards. Whether it's been answered or not by God.
Right.
But absolutely praying to God and asking him for his intercession, for his mercy, his true mercy to come down and rain upon the people you love. Because we all are worthy of his justice. My sins are absolutely, but God's mercy is great.
And some might say, well, why, God let you into it so far, why at that moment? But sometimes God allows us to experience things so that we can comfort others in the midst of the same stuff.
Yeah, and God is outside of time. He sees things in a much bigger picture than we do. And as at least I see now in my little scope, the experience I've had in my past, God's used all of them and my mistakes. Not to show, oh, Leah's so terrible, but God is so great. His mercy is so big that people can come back after decades or whatever it is of being far, far from God. And that's a beautiful example that God gives us.
So you walk out of there.
Yeah.
They leave you alone.
Yep.
Then what? What'd you walk into?
Well, at that point, literally, I just walked home. I didn't know what else to do, so I'm walking down Fifth Avenue, crying like a crazy woman, sobbing. I just left my career, my life, and I'm not questioning that, but what do I do? How do I pay my bills, and what's going on? I mean, I had real practical problems here, not just, okay, what do I need to do with God and faith, but like, okay, God, I realize this is what I need, and I need you, and I need less of me, but how do I do it? And so I did the only thing a girl could do in my position, and, I called my dad. And I called my dad, and he, I called home, and he picked up, and literally the first thing I said to him is, Dad, if you don't come and get me, I'm going to lose my soul. And there's this long pause. And he responds with, he said, okay, baby, I'm coming to get you. And my father drove almost 2,000 miles from St. Louis, Missouri, all the way to Manhattan. And he came and he picked me up. So it was, obviously we all know about the, parable of the prodigal son.
Right.
I'm
it's
his sister.
Right behind you, right there.
Yeah, I'm a sister. So God willing, one day I'll be able to meet all the prodigal children of God. But yeah, so that's what happened. And my dad came, and during the time that my dad was making that trip to Manhattan, at that time I fell into this deep recollection, this examination of my conscience, if you want to call it that. And I started going back, and it was like from the moment I was 15, I even knew it then, it was that moment of accepting a poor definition of love, of an imitation love. And if we get that wrong, we'll get a lot of things wrong. And that whole decade of my life going through every sin, it was like this little movie was playing inside my head of every mistake I was making. And I became scared, I became desperate on that point of, what have I done? My dad's coming to get me right now, but will God, those same fears I had at 15, will God forgive me? I've done so much to offend, so much, so dark. I was scared. And the only thing that knocked me off of that train of thought was, I remember lying in my bed, all curled up in the fetal position, just crying and sobbing and weeping, and the TV was on. And it was playing in the background. I wasn't paying attention to it, but a reporter on the TV came on, and these words jolted me out of it. And he said, "It's official. John Paul II has just died." And it was that moment where I thought, what? Like, my Pope just died. And thinking I'm the only Catholic in the Catholic Church, like, how could you do this to me? You left me. You left me at the moment where I need you the most. I need you right now. And I had the beautiful opportunity to meet John Paul II when he came to St. Louis, and just years before, and this is in 2005 at this moment, obviously, when he died. And I felt almost alone, like, Pope John Paul, how could you leave me? But that was that moment when things kind of started to move, and shortly after, my father knocks on my door, and he's there, and you know, it all started to play out after that, and he had some very firm words for me as I opened up that door.
At what point during this process did you realize that your Catholic faith needs to be more than just the externals that look great, but need to really be shaping and setting the grid for all the other aspects of your life?
Well, for me, it was just, I think, the comparison to the fact that when I had myself at the center, or the world at the center, or culture at the center, or whatever it was nothing. My life was so empty. And just realizing, okay, truly God is the answer. How does I make that happen? I remember, in particular, reading a passage from the Bible of Christ saying, you know, whatever you do to the least of my people, you do unto me. And I'd always looked at this passage of, hey, whatever you do to me, you're going to get it. You know, God's going to get you, you know. But I realized, wait a minute, what I do to myself, how I hurt my body, my faith, my heart, my conscience, how I hurt myself, I hurt Christ. That really struck me at a moment where I realized, who are you? How dare you call yourself a Catholic? How dare you call yourself a Christian and lead this life? That can't be the same. And so when my father came to my doorstep, I opened up that door and I couldn't believe it. I was expecting to hear, all right, let's get in the car. You know, you put your mother and I through a lot of pain, a lot of grief. I can't believe you did this, but come on, we'll take you back. And I was ready for that type of response, and I deserved it. My father opens up the door and he's got a huge smile on his face and he says, I'm so happy to see you. And I just thought, you know, you're crazy. This isn't happening. And he gives me a hug, and then he proceeds to tell me how he wants to do all these things in New York before we leave. And I think, okay, well, I guess we'll just go ahead and do that. That's fine. And we'll pack up and go, and I'm ready. And he looks at me very serious and he says, but first we go to confession. And I just thought, oh, he didn't just say that. You know I need to go, but I'm so scared now because now I really got a lot to say. And how do I say that? Because once you say it out loud and when you confess that out loud, it's real. When you hear yourself say, I did this, I have committed this sin, and in this way, it's real. You can't hide it anymore. And I think my father could see the hesitancy on my face. And he says, you know, Leah, you called and you said you needed to come home. Well, I'm here to take you home, and church is home. And if you want to go anywhere else, you can call Southwest Airlines. So I clearly found myself back home.
Looking back, would you say that being a Catholic and having the graces of the sacraments through this whole time was crucial to you?
Yes.
And continues to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, you know, clearly in my baptism and my confirmation, those graces there, continually working, the prayers of others, supporting that. You know, there were a few moments in that 10 years when I tried to get back on track, and I went to confession and I received the Eucharist and the graces there. Absolutely. And without a doubt, those graces are there, and they really helped push me there. The prayers of others, the continual praying of that, you know, it really did help bring me to that point and that realization. So the little that I did have was still working.
How did this lead into, we've got about 5 minutes left, because I want to make sure, how did this lead into now what you're focusing your life on? Yeah,
so, you know, after I had that confession and that experience there, and literally coming home back to the Catholic Church, reconciling myself and admitting, okay, God, you were right, I'm wrong, help me. And I came back with an absolutely renewed sense of, I want to do this. I'm not scared to say that I'm a Catholic. I'm not scared to say that I'm a Christian, and I want my life to reflect that. I want to look like a Christian, act like a Christian, talk like a Christian, all of it. I want to walk the talk. And I came back and had that renewed sense. I knew I needed to rehabilitate chastity in my life, rehabilitate virtue in my life, take up those things of being courageous, of being honest, of being prudent in my decisions, of having self-control, moderation in my life, that my passions can't control me. I need to control them, and that's what we're called to as Christians. And with that, of those years that I spent afterwards and really rehabilitating the virtues, God presented opportunities for me with the interest that I have, my personality, that got me involved in talking about modest fashion and talking about virtue and talking to men and talking to women about chastity. And in 2008, I was invited to speak just randomly on the side with something small and local. And I wasn't sure if I should do that, but I kind of felt nudged a little bit by the Holy Spirit, and I thought, well, okay, I'll do that. And I was working full time in the areas of where my degree's in college, so I wasn't doing this type of apostolic work. But slowly it got to that point, and was asked to speak a little bit more. And then by, I believe, 2009, 2010, it was clear that God was calling me, I think, to full-time work. And I had a choice to make of, okay, basically, will you work for me in this way? And that's when I just took a huge leap of faith, and I said, okay, God, you brought me this far, you're going to keep on bringing me, and that's what I do now. I travel the world, it seems. God has brought me to share that message of mercy, love, chastity, modesty, and that's what I do.
Wow. God prepares us in sometimes strange ways, but He always has a plan. We've got an email from Amy.
Yes.
In Texas. As a youth minister, I work with a lot of girls who struggle with image and self-esteem issues. What can we do to help them see that they have God-given worth and beauty?
Absolutely. That first comes into, I think, our identity. Remembering our identity should be based on Christ, on God, that He is our creator, the uncreated being. I mean, He is that. We cannot look to see who we are in the world. And there has to be a distinction, and we need to kind of look at those, and the fact that the world especially promotes a certain type of womanhood, but that's not the true womanhood that we're called to. So we need to find our identity first in Christ, and to constantly start seeking that and understanding who we are as a woman, our virtues, and how we can help women. I love the Venerable Fulton J. Sheen, one of my favorite, hopefully, to-be saints, God willing, and he's got a great quote on that. And he talks about that the level of civilization can really be seen the level of its womanhood, and that when a woman aspires to truth, goodness, and beauty, that men wanting to go after their hearts will also aspire for those things too, that we can help create an upward movement in our culture of true womanhood and really redefine culture and redefine the world by that. And we as women need to be brave to take up these virtues, to set the bar high and not low.
Yeah, and men do too. I mean,
absolutely.
It's interesting that often in our culture we use the word handicap to be applied to people that can't see or can't hear, can't walk, and that. But sometimes a person's beauty can be a challenge for them, a handicap, if they don't recognize that it's a gift of God to be used for His glory and not our own.
Absolutely.
And we have a culture that rewards people for things that wasn't there. It had nothing to do with them. It was a gift of God. And can be tempted to get caught up in using it for the wrong reasons.
You're absolutely right. There's a great line by, I think it's Augustine, might be Aquinas, but I think it's Augustine. He says something to the fact of that beauty is a true gift from God that we all behold, but so that it cannot be distorted so much, God also gives it to the wicked. And we have to be careful with that.
That's right.
These are gifts. Website,
www.leahdarrow.com.
That's right.
If they want to find out more about what you do and maybe to contact you.
Sure, of course.
And it's leahdarrow.com.
That's right.
All right. Leah, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
God bless you and your continued witness for Him, for His church, and for the virtues that we're all called to live.
That's right. Praise be to God.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Journey Home. I hope that Leah's experience and her sharing of that are an encouragement to you, and also you parents out there, an encouragement to keep praying for those sons and daughters. You never know when God might answer that prayer and bring them home. God bless you. See you next week.